Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere. Cold, not just sweater weather cold. I mean, breath turns to ice, blink too fast, and your eyelashes freeze kind of cold. But don't worry, you won't need gloves. We're staying warm with stories, because tonight we're stepping quietly into a snow-covered legend, the kind that whispers across the Arctic wind and glows softly under the northern moon. A legend about a moon and a dog. And spoiler alert, you're not going to survive. Not from frostbite or polar bears, but because you trip over your parka trying to follow footprints in a snowstorm. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Also, leave a comment on what time is it where you are, and have you ever tried to imagine a dog on the moon? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up to silence. Not the silence of a quiet neighborhood or a turned-off TV, but the ancient silence of snow. The kind that eats sound and leaves only breath and memory. The light in your shelter is pale and silver, cast through the thin flap of stretched seal gut that serves as a window. You sit up slowly, wrapped in thick furs. Outside, the wind hasn't started yet. It's the time between times. Not quite night, not quite day, when the world doesn't know what to be yet. Your boots crunch as you step outside. The snow beneath your feet gives just a little, like packed flour. You blink up at the sky, and there it is. The moon, so close, so clear. It almost feels like it's watching you. And maybe it is. Because tonight, the sky holds more than just stars. You see them first. Faint, pressed into the snow just outside your hut. 4 perfect paw prints, not dog-sized, not really. Too big for a sled dog, too round, too deliberate, like something heavy but graceful passed through, something that walked the sky and left its steps behind. You follow them. Of course you do. They lead you past the drying racks of fish, past the overturned kayak, past the circle where the dogs usually sleep, all of whom are strangely silent tonight, not asleep, just watching the moon. Their ears twitch, their noses point skyward, and somewhere in the distance there's a single, long, low howl, not like the dogs you know. This one sounds like it's been echoing since before your ancestors had names. You keep walking. The snow crunches, the wind starts to stir. It tastes like copper and stories. And the tracks, those strange moondog prints, seem to shimmer slightly now as if lit from below. Now, of course, if you told anyone this in the city, they'd check your temperature and suggest herbal tea, but not here, not among the Inuit elders. Here, they might just nod and offer you a seat by the fire. You duck into the storyteller's hut. It's warm, smoky, smells like seal fat and cedar, even though you know there's no cedar anywhere near here. That's the magic of memory, maybe. The old man inside gestures for you to sit. Doesn't ask why you're here, just starts to speak, voice low, as if continuing a conversation the snow had started hours ago. He tells you, not with drama, not with fanfare, that the moon is not alone, that it has a dog, not a pet, not a sidekick, a companion, a creature of movement, of thresholds, a being that walks between light and dark, a guardian. The dog, he says, watches over the moon as it chases its sister, the sun, across the sky. Yes, they're siblings, of course they are. The story goes that once, long ago, the brother and sister lived in the same village. The brother fell in love with his sister, as myths often decide to do, and chased her into the heavens. To protect him, or perhaps to restrain him, he was given a dog. One that never tires. One that walks with him, sometimes behind, sometimes ahead, always pacing the heavens. You shift slightly on the sealskin mat, the fire crackles. Outside, you hear the howl again. The elder continues. He says, sometimes if you watch closely you'll see the dog's breath. He means the aurora, of course, those brilliant greens and pinks that ripple across the sky like silk. But here, it's the dog's breath, or its tail, or its shadow. No one's quite sure. And some say when the moon is full, you can see a darker patch, the dog, curled at the edge watching. You glance out the flap. The moon is high now, bright enough to cast shadows, and if you squint just a little, no, that can't be a tail. You look back at the elder. He smiles, not kindly, not knowingly, just like someone who's heard this story 1,000 times and knows exactly how it settles in your bones. You thank him. You step back out. The wind's picked up, brushing fine snow across the prints until they vanish. But you know they were there. And the moon, it still looks like it's watching. The next morning, you wake to the sound of snow shifting. Not falling, not crunching, just moving. Like something big walked past during the night and didn't bother to cover its trail. You sit up. The fire has long since gone out. The air inside your hut is brittle, the kind that makes your eyelashes stick together for a second. You pull on your boots, still slightly damp from yesterday, and step outside again. The snow is unbroken. Smooth, which is strange, because you remember those paw prints, you remember following them, you remember the elder and his fire, and the story about the dog who walks with the moon. But now, not even a scratch in the frost. The dogs are still watching the sky. You start your day anyway. You're supposed to help mend a net today, or maybe carve something useful out of walrus bone, something grounded, practical, but your hands keep drifting back to the sky. You squint up. No dog, just the moon, round, bright, quiet. You know the story wasn't just a story, but here's the thing, you don't need to prove it. That's not how these things work. The Inuit have never needed permission from telescopes or textbooks. Their stories are not guesses, they are memories, they are truths shaped like myths, told in the kind of voice that snow listens to, and today's voice, it's that of old Mialik, the net mender. She's sitting outside her hut, slowly unknotting a tangled seal line with fingers that move like water. She doesn't look up when you approach. She just says, he walks with her now. You don't ask who, she doesn't explain. Instead, she hums. A low, rhythmic tune that seems to match the slow unraveling of the rope. You sit beside her, and together you mend, or pretend to. She tells you a story in fragments, like chips of ice floating in tea. A boy once disappeared under the ice. His mother wept so hard that her tears formed a second moon in the sky. The dog, seeing her grief, leapt up to chase that moon, hoping to catch it, to bring it back down, but instead he found the real one, and stayed. You pause in your knotting. That story doesn't make sense. Or maybe it does. Some say, Mialik murmurs, that's why the moon pulls at the sea, it misses the earth. It wants to come home, but the dog holds it back. That part you understand. The wanting to come home. You remember something else the elder said. The dog isn't always kind. That surprised you then. Dogs are loyal, friendly, tail-wagging companions, right? But this one, the lunar dog, is older, wilder, less predictable. Some Inuit legends say the dog once bit a hole in the sky. That's why we have eclipses. The moon goes dark because its companion got too hungry. Others say it howls not out of sorrow, but out of warning. That when it howls, the wind follows, and behind the wind, change. You look up. The wind is starting to rise again. Mialik is wrapping up her net now, humming a lullaby about a seal who turns into a bird. Be careful tonight, she says suddenly, not looking at you. The prince might return. If they do, don't follow. You ask why. She shrugs. The dog is only kind to those who don't chase. That night, you try not to look out the window. You really do. But the moon is bright again, full, glowing like a lantern left burning too long. And just before you close your eyes, you hear it. A soft crunch just beyond your door. 4 slow steps. Then a pause. then another step, as if whatever's out there is deciding. Thinking. You don't move. You barely breathe. And then nothing. Just the sound of your heart and the endless snow beyond. You spend the next few days doing your best impression of someone completely unaffected. You help mend more nets, scrape hide, even sit through a lesson on how to recognize the different shapes of frost that form on different surfaces. Roof, sled runner, bear whisker. You nod a lot, smile occasionally, and try very hard not to glance up every time the wind shifts. But it's hard, isn't it? Because even when the sky is clouded, you can feel the moon, like it's watching or waiting. One evening, you're invited into a larger gathering. Everyone's crammed inside the main lodge, a low, warm room packed with bodies and soft laughter and the smell of blubber stew. It's the kind of gathering that feels like you've all retreated inside a heartbeat to escape the endless white outside. An elder named Ikuma, tall, slow-speaking, with skin like sun-warmed bone, begins to speak. His voice rises and falls in rhythm with the fire. And yes, it's another moon story, but this one's different. And this one is about a man, not a god, not a spirit, just a man. He was once a hunter, brave and arrogant. He believed the moon's light belonged to him, that it was placed in the sky so he could always find his way. So one day, when the light failed him and he got lost in a whiteout, he shouted at the sky, he cursed the moon, demanded it return, mocked its silence. And then he heard a growl, not from a bear, not from a fox, from above. When the snow cleared, there were tracks, paw prints the size of his hands, burned into the ice. He followed them, because of course he did. They led him far, far out, beyond the fishing grounds, beyond the hunting trails, beyond what anyone would call smart. He was never seen again. But sometimes, Ikuma's voice drops here. Sometimes when the moon is low and the wind curls in strange directions, you can still see the dog, not a ghost, not a trick of the light, a real dog. Big enough, the elder says, to carry the moon in its mouth. You look around, no one's laughing, no one even blinks, they've all heard this before. Some nod, some shift uncomfortably. Some, like you, don't know whether to believe or pretend to. And the strange part, it doesn't matter, because when the stew is passed around and the stories fade into murmurs, the warmth stays. So does the moonlight, just faintly peeking through the fur-draped entryway. Like it's listening too. Later that night, you sit alone on the edge of the ice. The sky is painfully clear. Stars like spilled salt. And the moon is huge, swollen with something it's not saying. You think of the hunter, of his anger, of his footprints, swallowed by snow. And then you hear it, not a growl, not a bark, just panting, heavy, rhythmic, close. You don't turn around, you don't need to. You know the dog is there, not angry, not kind, just present. And slowly you let yourself lie back on the snow, let your breath rise like smoke, let the moonlight touch your face, because sometimes the best thing you can do is stop chasing answers and start listening to footsteps that don't always leave tracks. You wake before dawn again because sleep out here doesn't really come in full doses. It just sort of visits like a polite neighbor. One moment you're dreaming about hot broth, the next your eyes are open and the ice feels louder than it should. Today is travel day, not for you technically. You're just tagging along. But for the hunters heading further out where seals still break through the floes and the wind hasn't scared everything away yet. Junak, the man with the braid of sea otter teeth, gestures for you to help load the sleds. You nod. Not because you're particularly helpful, but because pretending to be useful has become your new full-time job. The sled dogs are already barking, high-pitched, excited, somewhere between hunger and glee. One of them makes eye contact with you, too long, like it knows. And not in a friendly, throw the ball way, more in a, I remember your smell from another lifetime way. You back away slightly, it snorts, you swear it smirks. The caravan leaves just as the horizon goes lavender, and you ride in the last sled, bundled in furs you still haven't figured out how to wrap properly. The world unfolds in silence and crunch. Snow dunes stretch like frozen waves. The sky looks like it was painted by someone trying to remember what color warmth was. You don't talk. No one does. Conversation is for places with roofs. Out here, words freeze before they reach their target. Eventually, the sleds slow. A ridge appears, not tall but steep enough to block wind. Beyond it, a cave, dark, shallow, barely more than a dent in the world, but important. Junak motions again. You follow. Inside, it smells like old fire and stories that never quite got finished. They're here for the marks, the scratchings, the proof. No one calls it a shrine, but it feels like one. You see the first carving near the top of the wall, deep grooves etched into stone. It's a paw, a massive one, but stylized, like it was drawn by someone who'd only seen it in a dream and wanted desperately to remember. Below it, the moon. Not just a circle, but a wide, grinning face. And next to that, a line of smaller figures, some with spears, some with nothing at all. All looking up, you run your fingers along the grooves. They're cold, deeper than you expect. Junak speaks for the first time. That one, he says, pointing at the largest paw, was made by a boy who never spoke again after seeing the dog in the sky. You almost laugh. Almost. But Junak's eyes don't flicker. He believes this like you believe in seatbelts and expiration dates. You sit with the carvings for a while, not sketching, not studying, just absorbing. There's a rhythm to the symbols, like a chant etched in silence. You wonder if every culture has its version of this. Something between myth and warning, between bedtime story and cosmic footnote. A sudden gust of wind sneaks into the cave, and the fireless air shudders. Snowflakes chase each other at the entrance like they're debating whether to come in. You imagine the dog again, not fierce, not cuddly, just endless. Muzzle dipped in shadow, tail curled like a question mark, eyes full of reflection. Outside, the sky is changing, a faint shimmer. Not quite aurora, not quite cloud, just shifting silver. You turn to leave. One last glance at the carvings. The biggest paw seems a little deeper than before. But maybe that's just your mind, playing the same old trick it does with footsteps in sand, imagining movement where there was only memory. Back at the sled, Junak offers dried fish. You accept. It tastes like salt and regret. Perfect snack for existential pondering. The ride back is quieter, if that's possible. Even the dogs seem less eager. One of them keeps glancing upward, not barking, just watching. You find yourself doing the same. The moon isn't up yet, but you feel it. In your bones, in the ice under your boots, in the spaces between heartbeats where logic sleeps and wonder slips in through the cracks. And for the first time you wonder, what if the dog isn't chasing the moon? What if the moon is running away? You wake again a few hours later, convinced you've heard something breathing next to your ear. But when you open your eyes, it's just the snow. Hissing, whispering, doing its best impersonation of sentience as it slides down the sealskin flap of the tent. Inside it's warm, not beach vacation warm, but you can take your gloves off for a minute warm. You sit up slowly, your back cracks in a language only massage therapists understand. Outside it's still dark, or rather it's Inuit morning, which is basically less dark than midnight, but don't get your hopes up. Kalik, the elder, with the smoke-coloured parka, is already stirring something in a pot that smells like patience. You crawl over and sit beside him. He nods without looking at you and says, "Today, we talk about the moon's dog." "Oh, we're doing this now." He stirs once more, then ladles out 2 bowls of something that tastes vaguely like seaweed and confidence. You both sip in silence because apparently hot broth is sacred and should not be insulted with conversation. Finally, he begins. There was once a time when the moon walked on the earth. He was a man then, proud and curious, but pride makes you lonely, so he carved a dog out of snow and breathed life into it. You pause mid-slurp. That's adorable, terrifying, you're not sure, possibly both. The dog loved him, Calic says. It followed him everywhere, but dogs don't live forever. The man moon grew tired of losing them, again and again. So one day, he gave one final dog a piece of his own spirit, just enough to make it stay. You glance at your bowl. It suddenly tastes more meaningful. This dog, he continues, didn't need food, didn't sleep, didn't age, but it was still a dog, so it chased things, stars, comets, dreams, and one night, it ran too fast and it ran too far, and it caught the moon. You blink. Caught the moon, you ask, before remembering. You're supposed to just listen. Calic chuckles. Yes. And the moon, now no longer a man, had to rise higher to get away. That's why it circles above. Always just out of reach, always watched by the one dog that never dies. You open your mouth to say something skeptical, something scientific, but you stop, because behind Calic, through the flap of the tent, the moon is rising, and you swear for a second you see something next to it. A flicker, a shape, 4 legs and a tail made of shadow. You rub your eyes, nothing, just snow light and imagination doing cartwheels again, but still. Calic says nothing. He just sips, and that's when you realize something else. This story, like many others here, isn't told to explain. It's told to anchor, to remind, to keep certain truths from freezing over. You spend the morning listening to more legends, not just about the moon, but about the sun, the wind, the time a walrus fell in love with a glacier. You nod along, mesmerized by the cadence more than the content. These tales are threads, and the elders are weavers, stitching meaning into frost. By midday, the weather changes, which here means it gets different, not necessarily better. The sky goes flat and pale, like someone forgot to add depth. Snow begins to fall in horizontal slants, whipped by winds that don't believe in boundaries. You help reinforce the tent, you carry more wood. You pretend not to be mildly terrified by the dog that keeps circling the outer ring of the camp like it's sizing you up for a loyalty test. That night, over dried meat and a dessert made of something untranslatable, you ask the youngest child, maybe 6 years old, if she believes the dog is real. She tilts her head. Of course, she says. But why? You ask. Because sometimes, she replies, the moon looks back. And with that, she scampers off, chasing her own echoes in the snow. You look up, the sky has cleared just enough to see it. That perfect silver circle, floating, distant, watching. And even though logic tells you it's just a rock reflecting light, your bones aren't so sure anymore. And neither is the part of you that used to believe your stuffed animals could talk if you closed your eyes hard enough. The wind picks up. A soft howl cuts through the night. You tell yourself it's just the breeze. But you also pull your blanket a little tighter, just in case. By the next morning, the camp has shifted slightly, not in location, but in mood. Something's brewing, and it isn't just the fermented seal fat tea, which, by the way, is exactly as adventurous as it sounds. You shuffle outside, boots crunching on ice, so cold it squeaks, and spot Calic crouched near a ring of carved stones. He's holding a bone, possibly walrus, possibly something that once had teeth sharp enough to politely suggest you stay out of its cave. He draws symbols into the snow with it, pausing occasionally to hum a note that's less melody, more memory. This is what the Inuit call a tuangash reading. Some people translate that word as spirit helper. Others translate it as thing that you do not want to accidentally insult before sleeping. Both are valid. According to Calic, the spirits are restless today. Not angry, just twitchy. Like someone left the spiritual equivalent of a door open and now the cold is getting in. He doesn't say more. He just stands, brushes snow off his knees, and tells you that tonight the moon will be lower. You try to ask what that means, but he's already limping away, whistling softly. You suspect this is his version of dramatic exit music. The rest of the day passes like a dream with frostbite. You help patch another tent, chase after a child who insists the wind tried to steal her mitten, and nearly get knocked over by a sled dog with a vendetta against strangers wearing red scarves. And then night falls. And with it, a moon so bright, it turns the snow into velvet. The sky clears completely, not a star out of place. It's the kind of scene you'd see printed on a holiday card, if holiday cards came with frostbite warnings. The whole village gathers outside, bundled like cabbage rolls, staring upward. Calic says nothing, just raises one hand and points. You follow the direction of his mittened finger and see it, a second glow, dimmer, fainter, following the moon like a loyal companion. Someone gasps, someone else mutters an old word you don't understand but feel in your spine. "The dog," says Junna, the woman with the laugh like crunching snow. "He's returned." You squint. Honestly, it looks more like a smudge than a spirit. But then it moves. Not with the clockwork precision of a planet, but with the tail-wagging indecision of something trying to decide if it should fetch the moon or let it go. And suddenly it makes sense, not scientifically but story-wise, the kind of sense that feels old, that bypasses the brain and pokes at your ribs like an elder asking if you're really dressed warmly enough. The elders begin to sing, a low, rhythmic chant, almost whispered. It's not in any language you know, but your body recognizes the beat. It's the rhythm of feet on ice, of paddles slicing water, of hearts trying not to break when the sea takes too much. They sing not to summon the dog or the moon. They sing to remember the world before both chose the sky. You close your eyes, you breathe in the cold, and it burns just a little. The chant pulls you inward, deeper like a current. Images float up, a boy carving a dog from snow, a man blowing life into it, a creature chasing stars across endless black. And just as you start to drift, caught between snow and song, a loud yelp breaks the silence. Everyone turns. A dog, very real and very unspiritual, has knocked over a pot of snowmelt. Laughter erupts. Tension breaks. Someone jokes that the moon's dog has bad manners. The elders chuckle, but you see Calic looking at the real dog with a strange softness. Later, as the crowd disperses and the firewood crackles its last sighs, you sit beside him and ask quietly, "Was that really?" He shrugs. "You saw what you saw." You press. "But what if it was just a cloud or a shadow?" He smiles. "That's the point." You wait for him to elaborate. He doesn't. Instead, he pulls a small pouch from his coat. Inside is a carved piece of bone, shaped like a dog, mid-run. He presses it into your hand. "Sometimes," he says, "truth needs a collar." You turn it over. It's smooth from years of handling. On the back is a tiny mark, a crescent, etched by someone with patient hands. You don't ask who made it. You don't have to. Later, in your tent, you hang it near the flap. The wind flutters it gently, like a tail wagging in sleep. And somewhere in the sky, the moon keeps moving. But maybe not alone. The next morning greets you with the kind of silence that makes you feel like you've overslept. Though in truth, you haven't. Time here moves not in hours, but in shadows across snow and the soft crack of ice expanding underfoot. You push open the tent flap and step into a white, so bright, it squeaks when you blink. The others are already awake. A group of children is tracing shapes in the snow, arguing over whether they're making a moon dog or a snow goose. Calic sits nearby, carving something from driftwood, his eyes squinting, not against the light, but against memory. He hasn't said a word since last night's not-quite apparition, but you can feel something different in the air. The kind of change that doesn't shout, but hums. Breakfast is served, dried fish, more tea that tastes like boiled leather and regret, and a mysterious jelly that Junna claims is made from berries and snow. You nod politely, pretending to enjoy the sensation of your tongue, momentarily giving up on life. Then it's time to move. The elders have decided to lead a short trek today. Not for survival, but for story. You're told there's a hill, not far, where the sky touches the land more closely, and the wind sings in a way it remembers. You don't fully understand what that means, but your boots are already on before you can question it. The path leads up a ridge, uneven and whispery. Your legs ache halfway through, not from exertion, but from resisting the urge to slide back down like an overgrown sled dog. The children run ahead, their laughter cutting through the cold like flint on steel. Halfway up, you pass a ring of stones, arranged in a near-perfect circle. Jonna slows down and points. "They say this is where the dog landed once," she says softly, "when the moon was too full, and he needed rest." You crouch and look closer. The stones aren't just stones, they've been etched, faint lines worn smooth by time. Paw prints, claw marks, or just cracks in the rock? Hard to say. But the circle feels held, like something used to be here and still hasn't quite left. You don't speak. Neither does Juna. You just walk on. At the top, the world opens. Below you, the village, dots of fur and fire. Beyond that, ice, ocean, and the curve of the sky. And above you, nothing but light. Not the angry brightness of noon, but a calm, shimmering glow. Like the moon left a fingerprint here. This is where the elders begin the tale, not a speech, not a performance, just telling. They say there was a time when the moon wasn't alone. That long ago, before names and calendars, the moon travelled with a companion, a dog born of mist and breath and cold stars. A loyal creature with paws that never left prints and eyes that saw both day and night. They wandered together, the moon lighting the path, the dog clearing it, and sometimes, when the dog was tired, the moon would carry him, and when the moon wept, the dog would howl, not out of sorrow, but to call back the light. You're not sure when you started sitting, or when your breath began to match the cadence of the story, but suddenly you're there, not on a hill in the Arctic, but in a world where dogs chase comets and stars respond like bells. "Why did the dog leave?" you whisper. An elder, her skin mapped like glacier lines, looks at you gently. "He didn't leave. He just runs ahead sometimes." You want to ask more, but the wind interrupts. A sudden gust, cold, playful, and full of mischief, swirls around the circle. For a second, the snow lifts into the air, dancing like fur. Someone laughs, someone else gasps, and in that brief swirl of white, you swear you see a shape, a tail, a tongue, lolling, a dog, mid-leap, chasing something just out of sight, and then it's gone. The snow settles, the story ends, the elders say nothing more. The children are already racing back down the hill, trying to outrun the wind. Calic lingers, carving still. The others begin to pack up, murmuring softly to the stones. You remain for just a moment longer, letting the cold bite your cheeks and the silence settle into your bones. The moon isn't visible yet, but you glance up anyway, and somehow that empty sky feels less alone. You descend from the hill with something unspoken clinging to your shoulders. Not snow, not cold, but a feeling like you've just brushed up against the edge of a memory that doesn't belong to you. Behind you, the circle of stones disappears into the white, and in front of you the camp seems to exhale as you return. The others don't talk about what happened. No one mentions the shape in the snow or the way the air shimmered. But the silence isn't denial. It's reverence. Like when you walk into a room and someone has just finished a prayer. You think about asking Jonna, but she's busy helping her grandmother set up a rack for drying fish, a task involving far more precision and grunting than you expected. So you wander instead. It's early afternoon now, though you'd never know it by the sky. The light here is diffuse, timeless, as if the sun forgot how to be in charge. Children nap, curled against their mothers. The wind has calmed, and the dogs, actual dogs, the ones with tongues and fleas and questionable loyalties, are sprawled lazily in the snow, doing their best impressions of creatures with dignity. Calic is nowhere to be seen. You find him eventually perched on a small ridge of packed snow, staring out at the bay. In his lap, the carving. It's a dog, or maybe a wolf, or maybe a cloud that forgot to be fluffy. Either way, it has a moon on its back and a look of impossible loyalty carved into its eyes. He doesn't look at you when he speaks. My father used to say the dog isn't just real, it's necessary. You blink. Necessary? He nods slowly. The moon is too powerful to be alone. Light that constant needs something to ground it, something to chase, something to remember how to return. You sit beside him, careful not to disturb the carving. The ice below creaks, not in warning, but in welcome. Do you believe it? You ask. He smiles just a little. I've seen stranger things, like city people who think all snow is the same. You laugh. It slips out before you can stop it. And he nods, satisfied. As the day wears on, the village begins preparing for the evening fire, a nightly ritual that is equal parts warmth, storytelling, and mosquito deterrent. You're asked to gather twigs. It seems small, almost insulting, given how far you've come and how many layers you're wearing, but you do it anyway. Junna joins you midway through, tossing sticks into your arms with a grin that says, "You're doing fine, but not great." "I heard you saw him," she says, not looking at you. You hesitate. "Maybe. That's more than most get." You stop walking. "Is he real?" you ask. For once, you don't mean real, like a fairy tale or a metaphor. You mean it the way someone asks if a bridge will hold. She shrugs. "The wind says yes, the elders say maybe. My uncle says he once wrestled the dog for a seal and lost. He also says snow tastes better on Tuesdays, so..." You both laugh. It's a quiet sound, absorbed instantly by the ice. That night, the fire is larger than before, not hotter, just taller, like it's listening. The elders take turns telling stories. Some new, some ancient, some that feel like both. One man recounts the time the moondog howled so loud it cracked the lake and let spring escape early. A child insists she saw him chasing stars last summer. Someone sings a song where each verse ends with a bark. You notice Calic passing the carving around, letting others hold it, run their fingers over the grooves, whisper to it. One child cradles it like a puppy. Another tries to feed it a scrap of fish. At one point, someone hands it to you. It's heavier than you expect. Smooth in places, rough in others. And warm. Not from the fire, from the hands that have touched it. From the belief poured into it like breath into a flute. You hold it for a long moment, then pass it on. Later, much later, after the fire has sunk to embers and the wind begins to rebuild its strength, you lie in your tent and listen to the silence. Then, faint, a howl, far away, not sad, not lonely, just calling, like the moon remembering something it once loved, and the dog somewhere beyond the hills answering back. You wake before dawn, not because anyone calls you, but because the quiet feels different. Not deeper, not louder, just waiting. Like the whole world is holding its breath. Outside, the camp is still asleep. The fires have died down to soft, glowing embers. Junna is curled up under furs, one hand sticking out, fingers twitching like she's dreaming of snowball fights or very persuasive fish. You step carefully past her and out into the frost. The stars are still out, glittering like someone spilled salt across black velvet. But the moon is bold tonight, huge, luminous, and hanging low on the horizon like it can't decide whether to rise or sit back down. You remember Calic's words, light that constant needs something to ground it, something to chase. You wonder if the dog is awake too. You crunch through the snow, following no path, just moving toward the place where the sky feels the widest. The air is so cold it squeaks in your nose. Your breath comes in little clouds like you're testing a spell. Then, over a rise, you see them. Not just one or two, but a small gathering of elders, standing in a circle, silent, as if watching something you can't see yet. They don't look surprised to see you. One even nods like you were expected all along. In the center of their circle is a patch of undisturbed snow, perfect, flat, and somehow glowing faintly blue. An old woman steps forward. Her face is a map of creases and her eyes are like ink dropped in water, deep, spreading, unreadable. "You heard it last night," she says, simply. It's not a question. You nod. "The dog howls when the moon is listening," she continues, "and when someone new is ready to listen too." You open your mouth to reply, maybe to ask if you're still dreaming, but she lifts a hand. Instead, she gestures for you to sit. The elders begin humming, low, slow tones that feel older than the ice. It's not music in the usual sense. It's more like vibration, like the mountain itself is thinking out loud. Then she begins a story. It's not the dog story you've heard before. It's older, more raw. It tells of a time when the moon was not a thing in the sky, but a being on the earth, curious, restless, lonely. The moon wandered, seeking company, but everything it touched either turned to light or fled in fear. Except one creature, a dog, mangy and small, who didn't know to be afraid. The dog barked at the moon, bit its ankle, stole its food, and slept on its chest when it got cold. And the moon, instead of burning the creature, laughed. They became inseparable. But the world, as always, demanded order. The spirits insisted the moon take its place in the sky, to give light, to mark time, to balance tides. So the moon obeyed. But it didn't go alone. It brought the dog. And to this day, when you look closely, really closely, you can see a shape trotting beside the moon's arc, a silhouette of loyalty. That, the old woman says, is why the moon never moves in a straight line. It's walking a dog. You blink, the snow patch is still glowing, but it's fading, softening, like a dream dissolving into morning. One by one, the elders begin to leave. No fanfare, no bows, just a soft crunch of boots on snow. Only the old woman remains. "You'll want to remember this," she says, "because when you go back south, people will ask what you found up here, and you'll be tempted to say, nothing, just cold, just silence, just stories." She leans closer. "But stories are how we survived. And the dog is how we loved." She leaves you there in the blue quiet with a heart that feels both full and very, very soft. Later, when you rejoin the others, no one asks where you went, but Juna hands you a carved charm, a tiny moon with a tiny dog curled beside it. You raise an eyebrow. "Gift from my grandmother," she says. "Said you'd need it." You nod, not trusting your voice. That night, as the fire crackles and the children argue over who gets the last bit of dried seal meat, you lean back and look up. The moon is there. So is the dog. You can't prove it, but you don't need to. The next morning, the sky shifts. Not the kind of dramatic movie trailer shift with thunder and lightning and someone yelling, "The prophecy!" No, this is slower. Stranger. Like someone tilted the world just a bit and forgot to tell you. The snow is quieter, the wind less sharp. Even your breath fogs differently, curling sideways like it's following something invisible. Juna notices too. She squints at the sky, rubs the frost from her eyelashes and mutters. The wind's confused. You don't ask what that means. You're learning not to ask. Just nod and look like someone who grew up deciphering ice whispers. Today the village is preparing. For what? No one tells you. But everyone is slightly busier, slightly more focused. Nets are checked twice. Dogs are fed a little earlier. The sleds are brushed off and left by the edge of the snowfield, like runners at a starting line. A man you barely know, whose parka is so patched it looks like a quilt made by a very indecisive grandmother, hands you a small pouch. "For you," he says, then walks away before you can even ask if it's food or a warning. You open it later. 3 smooth stones, each dyed a different color: red, white, and dark blue. No explanation, just stones. But they feel warm in your hand, like they've been held by stories longer than yours. Midday, the old woman returns. You don't know her name. You're not even sure if she told it. But when she walks into the circle of houses, everyone pauses, like a breeze just walked through their memories. She calls for quiet, which is unnecessary. The village listens before she even speaks. It's time to remember, she says. And that's how you end up sitting again in a circle, this time outside, on a fur blanket dusted with snow, while she tells the story of the lost moonlight. Apparently, long ago, the moon had a twin. Not a sister, not a reflection, a twin. Identical in shape, opposite in heart. Where one lit the world gently, the other scorched it. Where one waited patiently, the other demanded devotion. The 2 moons danced for centuries, circling, flirting, colliding. But eventually, there wasn't enough sky, and one had to go. No one knows who decided. Some say the elder moon sacrificed itself. Others believe the angry one was banished, and still others claim they merged, and now the moon you see is both. Confused, beautiful, moody. But that night, the story isn't about the moons, it's about the dog. Because when the second moon vanished, the dog refused to choose. It had loved them both, so it leapt, from sky to sky, chasing shadows, sniffing the edges of clouds, searching. And that's why every so often the wind changes direction. It's the dog, still looking, still hoping. Some things, the old woman says, don't end. They echo. She taps her chest. Here first, then here. She touches her temple. And just like that, the circle disperses again. No applause, no discussion, just people returning to chores with a softness around their edges. You find Junna sorting ropes. She glances up. We leave tomorrow? Where to? To see the sky from a different place. You don't ask what that means either. That night, you sit by the edge of the ice and watch the aurora dance. Green and violet threads whip across the sky like someone trying to stitch open a secret. And for just a moment, you swear you see a shape in the lights. Not a face, not a god, a tail, wagging. The dog is running again, not lost, just looking. And you, wrapped in too many borrowed furs, smile to yourself, because somehow that's enough. You wake to the sound of something brushing against your tent, not scratching, not clawing, just brushing, like a ghost with terrible timing, or a dog, still looking. Junna pokes her head through the flap. Time to move. She says it like you're going to the grocery store, not crossing a frozen wilderness based entirely on a feeling and some colored rocks. Packing is surprisingly fast. The people here don't own much, and what they do own is either tied, folded, or mysteriously compact. You, on the other hand, are struggling to get your parka's second tie in place because, once again, your gloves are too thick and your patience is too thin. The sleds are lighter today. Some food, some supplies, a few bundles you're too polite to ask about. No weapons, though, at least not the obvious kind. Just one long harpoon and a bone knife that looks more ceremonial than useful. Junna hands you something wrapped in fur. Your job. You unwrap it to find a drum, hand-carved. Reindeer skin stretched tight across a wooden frame, painted with strange red symbols, and a figure that could be a fox, a star, or a man doing yoga. You raise an eyebrow. I don't drum. She shrugs. You listen. So you listen, and walk, and slide, and occasionally fall in a very undignified way when the ice shifts beneath your feet like it's laughing. The landscape is flatter today, less drama, more quiet. You pass frozen inlets that glimmer like spilled silver. A cluster of seabirds stares at you with the judgment of committee elders, and once you think you see a shadow pass overhead, silent and enormous. But when you look up, nothing's there. By midday, the group pauses at a rock formation shaped like a sleeping whale. It's not sacred, Junna says, but it might be. No one's quite sure. But just in case, they leave an offering, a slice of dried fish and a carved bead. You ask, is that enough? She replies, it's not about enough. It's about acknowledging. You sit near the tail of the stone whale, watching a small boy from the group balance a fishbone on his nose. He's terrible at it, but determined. Later, as the sky begins to tint orange with the low arc of Arctic sun, the group reaches a hollowed cliff, not tall but deep, like someone had taken a bite out of the land. This apparently is the place. No one says what it's called. Maybe it doesn't have a name. Maybe it has too many. Junna instructs you to sit with the drum. Face the cliff. Wait for the wind to start. You do as told, because by now you've learned it's faster than asking. At first, nothing happens, just you, a rock wall, and the faint regret of not bringing a snack. But then, the wind starts, not a gale, not a storm, more like a whisper that got tired of being ignored. It moves through the cliff in a strange rhythm, hollow, musical, like breath through a bone flute. Junna starts to hum, low, monotone. Then others join. You feel it in your chest before your ears catch it, like a memory waking up. And then the story begins. Not words, not gestures, but rhythm. The drum in your lap starts to vibrate slightly, not by magic, by echo. You tap it, unsure. The sound bounces back, warped by the cliff folding in on itself. Junna's voice slips between notes, not lyrics, more like emotion shaped into syllables. Someone begins to dance, slowly, wrapped in furs, arms moving like the northern lights. You close your eyes, and in the darkness images form. A woman carrying a lantern carved from ice, a man riding a bear made of wind, a child who grows older with every footstep. They're not real, but they're also not real. And then, finally, the moon appears. Not the actual one, a painted mask held high by someone's gloved hand. It's smiling, but not kindly. Behind it, a second mask, a dog's face, mouth open, waiting. The dance ends with a single bow, no applause, just the crackle of snow shifting underfoot. Junna turns to you. Now you understand. You don't respond right away, because she's wrong. You don't understand, but you feel something old, something chasing. And sometimes, that's enough. You sleep that night in a cave warmed by seal oil lamps and a blanket that smells faintly of moss and animal fur. The walls flicker with dancing light, and somewhere near your feet someone is softly carving a bone into the shape of maybe a fish, or a wing, or really tired foot. No one explains the ceremony from earlier. No one tells you what you saw or if you were supposed to see it at all. But in your dreams, the moon chases you, and you run, not out of fear, but out of obligation, because it expects you to. Morning comes slowly. The cave mouth glows with a shy blue light, and your breath hangs in the air like punctuation. You stretch, a little stiffer today, a little more aware of your knees, and crawl out into the cold. The village is already stirring. Someone is making tea, someone is patching a sled, someone is yelling at a dog that is absolutely not listening. You ask Junna where you're headed next. She answers with one word: up. You do not like up. Up means cliffs. Up means wind in your face like a disappointed ancestor. Up means slipping on ancient rock and pretending you meant to do that. Still you follow. The climb is not heroic. It's awkward and cold and involves more crawling than you'd like to admit. But eventually, you reach the top of a granite bluff that overlooks everything. Frozen ocean, jagged ice, a sky so clear it feels fragile. Junna gestures ahead. That, she says, is the place where the dog lost the moon. You look. There's nothing there, just snow and silence. But the others begin to set up a ring of stones, small, precise, almost like the outline of a forgotten fire. You sit again. You're getting good at that. This time, there's no ceremony, no drum, just stories. Junna begins. There was a time when the moon was not in the sky. It was on earth. It walked like a man. It hunted like a wolf. It laughed like a trickster. You nod. Of course it did. But the big dog, was hungry, and the moon was bright. And when something shines, something else always wants to chase it. You're not sure if that's myth or just life. Another elder picks up the story. The dog chased the moon for many nights, over mountains, through rivers, across the edge of the world. A third voice adds, but the moon was clever. It tricked the dog, ran up the ice cliffs, leapt into the sky, and never came down. Silence. Then Junna finishes, and the dog? The dog still waits. Sometimes you see him in the clouds. Sometimes you hear him in the wind. And sometimes, if the moon gets too low, he still tries. You don't know whether to clap or cry. Instead, you say, "Why tell that story now?" Junna looks at you with that expression that makes you feel like a child and a fool all at once. Because tonight, the moon is low. You look up. It is. A fat silver curve just hovering near the horizon. The elders pack up quietly. They don't say if the dog is real, but no one denies it either. That night, you sleep in a wind shelter made of snow bricks and prayer. The air outside howls once, long, low, and unmistakably canine. Junna doesn't flinch, but you do. And when you finally close your eyes, you dream not of being chased, but of being watched from just behind the stars. You wake up with your face half frozen and your blanket tangled like a broken net. It's morning, or at least a version of morning, and your nose informs you that someone nearby is boiling something suspiciously fish-like. Junna hands you a bowl. You don't ask questions. Today's journey is sideways, along a narrow ridge carved by centuries of wind and wandering caribou. The snow beneath your feet crunches like glass wrapped in velvet, and the sun is a pale suggestion behind clouds that look like someone tried to erase the sky but gave up halfway. You ask Junna where you're going, and she replies with a shrug that translates roughly to somewhere old. The destination is not on a map. It's not even on a rumor. It's a hollow in the earth, hidden behind an outcrop of stone that resembles, suspiciously, a sleeping walrus. Inside it smells of ash and wet fur. This, Junna says, is a memory cave, a place the elders used when memory needed a place to rest. You sit near the back. The floor is soft with centuries of skin and soot. The walls are painted, not with brushes, but with fingers, soot, and seal oil. Spirals, dogs, moons, a human figure with stars in its chest and a tail made of flame. None of it labeled, all of it loud. A younger villager, maybe 10, crouches beside one wall and begins to trace one of the figures with reverent fingers. This one, she says, was the dog's first howl. It scared the stars. You blink. Scared the stars? The child nods. They ran away, that's why the sky isn't full. You've heard worse cosmologies. An elder joins in, pointing to another figure, a black arc with 3 dots. That, he says, is the night the moon came back with teeth marks. You stifle a laugh, but not entirely. He adds, some say the dog caught the moon once. Bit it. Let go. That's why it hides sometimes. You squint. You mean an eclipse? He shrugs. You mean the moon getting shy? Touché. The cave darkens as the day progresses. A small oil lamp is lit. Shadows dance. You realize the dog is painted many times on these walls. Not always the same. Some are lean and sleek, some bulky and scarred. One has wings, another has eyes where its paws should be. All of them are chasing, none of them are catching. You whisper to Junna, do they believe the dog will ever win? She takes a moment, then says, it's not about winning, it's about the chase. If the moon ever stopped running, the sky would fall asleep. You consider that. Then you consider how tired the sky must be. A small ceremony begins, this time just song. A gentle, rhythmic chant in a language so old it sounds more like snow than syllables. It rises and falls like breath. You don't understand it, but you understand it. A boy offers you a bone charm carved into a moon shape. It's warm from his hand. You take it. As you leave the cave, you turn for one last look. One of the painted dogs seems to have moved. Probably just the flicker of lamplight. Probably. Outside, the wind has changed direction. It smells of salt and stars. You ask Junna if you're going back now. She looks at the horizon. No, she says. We're going forward. And behind you, in the cave where memory sleeps, the painted dog keeps chasing. And maybe, just maybe, it's gaining. You walk through the snow with a sense of unease. Not fear, not exactly. But the kind of discomfort you get when your feet are cold and your brain starts to wonder if this entire trip is just an elaborate hallucination brought on by salted seal meat. Junna doesn't say much. She's humming something. It's either a lullaby or a warning. You decide to take it as a lullaby, for now. The sky is still dim, like someone turned the contrast all the way down. The moon hangs low, yellow and swollen, and for the first time you see it differently. Not as a symbol, not as a distant sphere of rock, but as a participant. Something alive, maybe even hunted. Junna points up. Look. And you do. There's a line of paw prints in the snow sight, but not on the ground, in the sky. A streak of stars arranged like a trail. You blink hard. Maybe it's a constellation, maybe it's wishful thinking, but once you've seen it, you can't unsee it. They say, Junna begins, the dog leaves footprints when it gets too excited. That's how we know it's close. You squint up again. Close to catching? Close to trying, she says. The village you approach next is not where people live. It's where they remember. Wooden structures built in the shape of questions. Curves, spirals, open walls that let the wind speak freely. You're told this is a place where stories are repaired. You wonder aloud, do stories break? Junna smiles faintly. All the time. That's why we tell them over and over, to fix the cracks. A woman greets you with hands stained in charcoal. Her hair is long, braided with beads made from bones. She leads you to a structure shaped like a spiral shell. Inside, it's warm. A fire burns in a hollow made from packed snow and whalebone. The smoke rises through a vent carved with runes. You sit on a mat and wait. The storyteller begins not with words but by drawing, circles in soot, lines like chasing. She hums, the room listens. Her story is not chronological. It loops, it repeats, it contradicts itself. The moon was a god, the moon was a boy, the moon was a lost dog's favorite toy. The moon was the last fish that escaped the net. The moon was a hole in the sky where light leaks out. The moon once lived in the ocean and rose each night to howl. You ask, which is it? She replies, which do you need? Fair point. Then softly she says, some believe the moon dog is lonely, it's not chasing to bite, it's chasing to belong. You stop breathing for a second. That feels too real, too close. The fire pops. Outside, a gust of wind presses against the walls like a giant exhaling. You sip something hot and herbal. It tastes like moss and lightning. You don't ask what it is. Junna leans close and whispers, when the wind howls just right, they say that's the dog singing. You listen. And sure enough, a long, low sound cuts through the air. Not a growl, not a threat, a song. One long note held with the sadness of something trying to find its place in a world that keeps moving. You close your eyes. You remember every time you chased something, love, success, peace, and how often it slipped through your hands like smoke. You ask Junna, do we all have dogs inside us? She grins. Some of us have whole kennels. And for the first time on this journey, you laugh. A real one, the kind that fogs the air and warms your ribs. The storyteller smiles without looking at you. When the laughter echoes, she says, the dog rests. You sit a little longer. You feel your heartbeat match the rhythm of the hum, the crackle of fire, the breathing of strangers who are somehow not strangers at all. Outside, the stars shift. And in the silence between stories, you hear it again. The gentle, persistent padding of paws in the snow. Still chasing, always chasing, but maybe, just maybe, not alone anymore. You wake up to darkness that isn't entirely night. It's the kind of soft twilight gloom where the snow glows faintly and every sound feels like it was muffled by a thick fur coat. Junna is already packing. She moves like someone who knows the ritual of departure matters more than the speed. Today's the last day. Not of winter, not of the moon's dance, but of your strange, sideways journey into stories that breathe and dogs that dream. You step outside. The sky looks different. Not clouded, not clear. Just aware. Like it's watching. Like it knows you've been asking questions. You walk in silence. Your breath curls into little ghosts. The moon is almost full again, hanging over the landscape like a lantern someone forgot to bring in. You keep listening for the dog. You wonder if you'll miss him when he finally rests. Junna hands you a bundle. Inside is a carved figure, the moon dog, curled up like it's sleeping, tail tucked, ears folded. "It's for remembering," she says, almost shyly. You nod, holding it like something sacred and ridiculous all at once. It smells faintly of burnt antler and cedar. Your path leads you to a frozen lake. Perfect, still, and impossibly wide. You cross it slowly, your boots crunching with each step. The ice sings, not cracking, not warning, just humming like it remembers how to be a river. Halfway across, you stop. Junna stops too, sensing something. The sky begins to shimmer, not with northern lights, with motion. It's faint at first, just a flicker, then clearly a shape in the stars, a figure running, 4 legs, tail, the dog, gliding across constellations like it's chasing not the moon, but the memory of one. You point. Junna just nods. Sometimes he shows up to say goodbye. The dog doesn't howl, it doesn't bark, it just runs, graceful, silent, eternal. And you feel something shift, not dramatic, not world-changing, just a little click inside your chest, a lock turning, a door opening. The moon looks calmer now, like it's not being hunted, just accompanied. You reach the other side of the lake and enter a grove of trees bowed low under the weight of snow and time. Junna leads you to a small stone bench and sits. You sit too. She looks at you, really looks. "You came to learn about a dog and a moon," she says. "But maybe what you found was yourself." You smile but say nothing. "Sometimes silence is the most honest language," she continues. "The dog will keep chasing. The moon will keep running. That's the rhythm, the dance. But you get to choose what you carry from here." You think about the carved dog in your pack. You think about the stars, about stories that change every time they're told, about how truth isn't a point, it's a path. Eventually you rise. Your body is tired but not heavy. Your mind is full but not noisy. You take one last look back. The stars flicker, the wind sighs, and somewhere, faint and familiar, you hear the pad of paws moving on. The snow begins to fall again, soft, gentle, like ash from a dream. You follow the trail back to where you began, only now you see it differently. Not just a path through snow, but a path through stories, layered, looping, alive. Each step quiets your mind. Each gust of wind smooths the edges of your thoughts. By the time you reach your shelter, your breath is slow. Your fingers unclench. Your eyes feel heavier. You lie down on furs that smell like smoke and spruce. The moon dog is gone for now, but maybe not far. You close your eyes. And in that final flicker of awareness, you think, the moon is still running. The dog is still chasing. And somehow, the world is still singing. End of script. Sweet dreams.